right, and we are recording. So we want to thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Noire Life Magazine Presents. Tonight, I have the pleasure of being with some of my awesome team, who I like to call the Noire creators. They're like the Justice League. We out here fighting crime on every level. So I'm gonna let them go through and introduce themselves, and then we're going to jump right into the conversation. Tonight, the conversation is after we vote, what's next? Last week was the big election, so now we need to talk about what are the next steps? What do we do as Black people, Black men, Black women, everywhere? What do we need to do next on the ground, grassroots level? All right, so I'll start off. I am David. I'm the founder and editor of New Our Life. Who wants to go next? Anybody? That's popcorn. Anybody can go next.
Hey everybody, my name is Yolanda. I am a writer for Noire Life, and I think I'm the only person up here from a red state. But it's okay.
It's
I
okay.
know, bunch of pearls.
It's okay, sis. I'm from that same red state. You know how I feel. I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed.
Yeah.
I'm Maurice. Part of our state is red. Mine is two portions of it, so don't worry. I'm here for you, girl. I am also a writer with Noire Life.
I am Anisha, from a solidly blue state, California, living in partially red Pennsylvania. I miss my blue bubble. Y'all can hear me? Y'all can hear me?
Barely. A little bit.
Is that better?
That's a little bit better. Say something.
Something.
Okay, got you.
Okay. Did y'all hear any of that? Start over?
Start over.
Okay. My name is Manisha. I am from a solidly blue state, California, living in partially red Pennsylvania, and I miss my blue bubble. That is Cali.
Hi everyone, I'm Lindsay Killett, a writer for Noire Life. I'm living in Blue State, New York, but I am from Red State, North Carolina, where I also voted absentee.
So I'm Rashid, and I'm from Philadelphia, Philly, Philadelphia to be exact. I don't know Pennsylvania. Yeah.
All right, y'all, let's jump into it. So let's just go around and talk about how did you guys feel about that wait? Like
waiting. I mean, for real, which one of y'all didn't think that we having this conversation and we had like all of the muck taken care of at least by now? We're still waiting, but anxiety ridden.
It's funny because I remember when we were planning this, one of the first things you and Manisha both said, because I was like, oh, we can do it like the night after or the day after. And you guys both said it. I remember y'all called it. Y'all was like, maybe a week. Let's do a week after to see what everything looks like, because they have to do mail-in ballots and, people are acting like the apocalypse were going to happen. So, yeah.
I can absolutely relate to that. Because I know for a fact I actually went out and got a lot of groceries because I didn't know whether the girls were going to be looting again. Power to them, of course, but I just wasn't sure. I don't know where my video went, but okay. But it was just a very, very like stressful situation. Because again, I remember last time we were all like pretty much like, there's no way this man is going to take office, and like he took office. So it was like we were completely blindsided last time because we had all this false hope. So many people hyped them up. Beyonce posted Hillary Clinton. So it was just like we really thought we had this shit in the bag, and we had nothing but 4 years of just tiredness. Not saying that our lives already haven't been full of that, but it just, you know, the girls have really showed out in the last 4 years. And I need them to go back into their little pocket.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was definitely one of those that had my groceries stocked up. Me and Larice had a little escape plan. She was like, sis, if you need me to come get you, let me know. Because, you know, Philly, you don't know, could go either way. So I was like talking to my friends at home. They're like, oh, no, yeah, it's fine. Again, blue bubble. And Philly, I was like, I'm not sure. I tried to go get cash, and the CVS around me is broke down and ghetto, so I couldn't get no cash. So I was upset about that. They had no cash back. I was like, oh Lord. So yeah, I thought that, you know, the Trumpsters was about to be out here acting fools. So I was prepared to like be in my house for a week. Then when I did end up going out on Friday, because we didn't have the results yet and it seemed fairly quiet, I like make sure I took my taser and my pocket knife and my mace, because what y'all not gonna do is catch me slipping. Okay.
So you took everything with you, basically. You just took the whole artillery. Okay. Okay.
That's like if She Ready was a person, that's it. I mean, but also we have to think about all the stuff that was going on in Philly like the week before. So there was a lot of, like, we had the National Guards here because of the murder of the young man in West Philadelphia. So there was just a lot happening around that time. And the National Guards were here still during election time. So it was like, you know, what's going to happen? So definitely stocking up and staying in when possible.
Yeah, you from my home state back in, you know, North Kakalaki. Like, what was the feeling down there?
Honestly, the wait was like torturous, I think, for everybody. But I mean, I'm from a red state, so I can't say the majority, it was like split really, was for Donald Trump. But it was eerily calm. Like no one was bugging out. At least I haven't seen it. But we also had looting and rioting in like the larger areas like Raleigh, Durham, Charlotte, because of the police stuff that was going on. And we've had like 5 minutes up the road, the police attacked some protesters that was marching to vote. So I don't know if y'all seen that was on national news. It was like 5 minutes from here where I live. And it's just crazy, but honestly, it's been eerily calm. Like no one's been bugging out. I think people, at least around here, I can't speak for every part of the state. You know, it's people mad. You know, them Trumpsters, because there's a lot of Trump Pence around here, are feeling some kind of way, but they haven't been overtly aggressive in any way, if that makes sense. So I think it's just a wait and see game. But as of now, everything seems okay. Like, I mean, I feel comfortable going to the store. Like, I did go get paper towel and stuff. I ain't know how they might trip over the paper towel and toilet paper again. So I did that, but haven't had any issues that I've seen like out when I've been out and about. So.
Good. What's happening in New York City?
Yeah, I was also high anxiety that day, like everybody else experienced. And I had the privilege of going upstate New York to get away, just to have some quiet and ride it out and see what happened. Up there, it was calm. But of course, when things started going towards Biden this weekend, New York was, hey, turning up. Like, unfortunately, I had to work, but on my way to work, you saw people on the corner with boom boxes, just people in the street honking their horns. Like, with COVID, the city had been quiet. It kind of seemed like it had died a little bit, but when was it, Saturday, the city was alive. Like, it was a good feeling compared to 4 years ago where the city was extremely sad. As a whole, you could just feel the eeriness. And then the opposite 4 years later, it's been pretty cool in the city. So
I like that. And I can definitely remember election night of 2016. I was living with my grandparents at the time in North Philly, and we were watching the results. And I remember I saw which way it was going. I got up from the table and I told my grandmother, "Good night. I'm going to bed. I already see where this is going." And you know, I'm gonna be honest, I felt defeated. I really felt defeated. But then with this, knowing that I was, you know, not only voting in this race, but I volunteered during this race. So it was different for me. I had like what they call stake in the game. And so I was watching CNN like I was watching the stock market. Like I was watching it, like, okay, what's happening every minute? Okay, this state came in, this state came in. Okay, that state came in. Okay, they count a little fast, but that's all right. We got your vote, you know. And I think Saturday, it was like around 11ish, I want to say. I I have to be honest. I was in the bathroom and I was on my phone and somebody posted on, and I remember looking at my phone, and somebody posted on Facebook, "We now have a president." I said, "Ooh, Jesus." I jumped off the toilet, um, and I ran into the living room. It's okay, it's okay. And I ran into the living room and I turned to CNN because I was balancing last week. So what I was doing, I would do half CNN and then I would turn to like Netflix or something else throughout the night, just to kind of take your mind off it, right? So I had turned to City Slickers. And then when I heard that, I was like, no, we got a president. Let me see who it is. And I go back and it's all across CNN. It's on NBC. It's on Fox. Joe Biden, president-elect. And I said, oh my God, we defeated Trump. We literally defeated Trump. And by we, I meant Black folks. I meant the Black women. I meant the folks that was out there, you know, campaigning, calling folks, texting people, making sure people had rides to the place, making sure our grandparents and great aunts and uncles filled out the mail-in ballot correctly. Like, we did that together, collectively. And so it was relief, but it was kind of like, it's a too good to be true relief. If y'all understand what I meant by that. Like, it's like, it's good, but what's next? What's gonna happen next? What was y'all thought process with that?
I mean, it doesn't help that we still are in this whole recount fighting with legislation. And at the end of the day, the man needs to concede and the people around him need to talk to him and tell him what to do, like the right thing to do, because that would be the right thing to do. He didn't win it. But I did a lot, like you, David, did a lot of like ahead of time preparation with other people. Have you registered? Let me show you how to register. You got a ride, you need a ride. Doing a lot of that and posting and things like that and calling and being a part of like just different organizations to try to make sure that we got the vote out. I was not on the toilet, David.
What were you? Watch. Was you eating crabs?
No. I might have been, actually.
See?
I might have been.
A bushel of crabs. Okay.
I was around the house, I believe. I probably was eating crabs, but and I'm still at the same like place you're at, and many of us are feeling like, you know, it's a relief, but like there's so much to be done still. I mean, on top of like the fact that we're still in this whole process of fighting what is, but there's so much to be done. Like we have literally, like we have half the country basically who voted for this dude, half. So now every time I'm outside, I'm looking at everybody like, was it you? You know what I mean? So when you
think about that, half is literally 1 and 2. So it's like,
yeah,
1 and 2.
That's huge. You know, we're really divided, and so there's a lot of hate and things going on that need to be resolved, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be kind of like therapy. It'll get worse before it get better. I don't know. But can we talk about that? Like 80% of Black men that voted. Like what happened with the other 20%? Can we? We're not talking
We'll
about that.
get to that. We'll get to that next.
I'll be quiet.
We'll get to that. Look. I see one of my friends at the bottom. He wanna chime in real quick. We'll get to that. We gonna dig into that. What is everybody else, impression like when you heard Biden won? Like, what was your reaction?
No, Lindsay, you can go. You can go ahead. You go off.
Sorry. But yeah, I was actually getting my nails done. I had adapted a kind of zen, like just focusing on being calm, because the anxiety the day of was already high. And then the trauma from 2016, I just went in like, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. So I was getting my nails done when I found out. Everybody in the shop was cheering. And I'm kind of keeping that mindset. Like, yes, there's a lot of legislation going on. There's still some anxiety there, but I can't let this wreck my whole week. I can't make myself go crazy over this. I did my part. I encouraged my fellow citizens to vote. I voted. That's all I can do. So, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. I was gonna say, I think the difference between, I guess that like that after election anxiety was kind of alleviated. I think partly for me, the reason why I was so much so what now was probably because I think back in 2016, I was about maybe a sophomore or a junior in college at that time. So if you were in any predominantly white space at that time after the election, you kind of remember those feels of like those kind of stares that you had when you walked into certain rooms that you shared with white people. And it's a little different this year anyway because I'm in the house and the baby will not go out in a panty. Kind of being relieved of that feeling of knowing that nobody's going to be looking at you and I don't have to be on guard and on defense and on go 24/7 after this. And not saying that people won't try things, but people will try things, but I pop back. So I'm not ever really worried about that. But it's just that confidence, that extra confidence that his win gave people, it didn't exist this time. And so people weren't able to easily just go on and A, spread misinformation, and then B, just spread disinformation. And then also just build themselves up with false confidence. So yeah, that was kind of different for me. And then also, I think that I want to kind of shout out one group of people in particular, and that would have to be disabled folks, because keep in mind, a lot of disabled folks actually turned out, like really, really turned out this year, because again, this is the life they live all the time and they can't make it to the polls. So this is what they're always doing. And we don't realize how much of the vote that we actually do rely on them for. And they showed out and they really did help save the world. Well, not necessarily the world, but not necessarily save, but help us, take that extra step to liberation. And I'm not going to say that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are the end all be all, because baby, they're not. And we have work to do. I understand people celebrated it, but we can still celebrate and have criticisms of people. And that's what people don't understand. So I just really want to just shout them out, because we don't think about them all the time. And they are disenfranchised from these conversations all the time. When they're doing a lot of the work, a lot of the on the ground work that a lot of people and able-bodied people should be doing all the time. So just want to give them that applause and just talk about, and just kind of mention them as one of those, after effects, and those people who are kind of still being glanced over, but baby, I see you.
Right, that's right.
For me, leading up to the election, I did a spiritual fast. So I fasted Monday and Tuesday. I have a couple other personal things going on, but fasting for peace, no matter what the outcome was. So Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday were really good for me. Tuesday, I didn't watch no election coverage. I wasn't even on social media. Part of it was because I wasn't eating. So, my energy was and I was, reading and praying more. So I was good. And then about Thursday, I think when we hadn't gotten the results, I was seeing people and I was engaged then. And part of it was entertainment for me because people were talking about it. So I was flipping through my channels NBC, and I was watching CNN, and I was watching Fox for some comedic relief. Because they real crazy, and I was be like, yeah, I really believe this. Y'all be on TV talking crazy. Like, it was kind of funny, but then I had to switch off of them because it was messing with my spirit. But like at the beginning, like I was good, and then like Thursday, I was watching more, and so like as the week going on, I felt myself getting a little more anxious. And when Saturday happened, when we got the results, I found out because I live in University City, West Philly, like West. I call it West University City, and it's like a mixed, like ethnically, racially mixed. A lot of demographically, like age-wise, it's a mix of families and college students and young professionals, all those things, like older adults. And so like I heard, because people were like rolling down my street honking, people were out screaming. So I was like, and I know I live in like a pretty liberal space. So I was like, what? And I looked. And then I felt relief, even though like I wasn't super anxious and worried, and I knew I had set myself up to be peaceful. I still felt relief, and I felt, I guess, the energy of everybody else around me. So I was in a celebratory mood. I went and got my nails done right after. And then after, I walked down to Clark Park, which is down the street from me, and like literally people was out partying. Like they had the streets blocked off. People was dancing, drinking in the street, live music, and it was like a really good vibe, and it felt like a sigh of relief. And like as soon as I found out, I posted, I was like, I'm gonna celebrate today, I'm gonna allow myself this joy, but tomorrow or Monday we back to work. Because we talked about it before, like Kamala and Biden aren't the people. I'm a baby burgeoning abolitionist, so like these aren't the people that's gonna give me what I want. Right. And I know that. However, I was like, I'm going to take today and allow myself to celebrate. And the people that want to celebrate, like, I'm happy. And I was proud of like the way Black folks turned out, like Black women, Black men, my other Black siblings, how we turned out. And like, we saved the country that continues to treat us like crap. And to me, that was a moment of pride and of celebration.
I like that.
I pretty
Hold up. You muted.
okay. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Okay. I pretty much had the same feeling as everybody. It was just like a weight of bricks, just like no more Trump. Like, even though he's still here and he's still acting like a baby. I mean, but this is what we have come to expect from this man. It's like this is what we dealt with for the all 4 years. But pretty much like everyone else, I kind of just checked out from election, like Tuesday. I would check in every now and then, see where it stands, and it's just like, okay, this is just too close for comfort. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Certain points I was just like, I know, like these people are voting for Trump. Like, he is gonna win. Like, I felt that for a certain amount of time. But then I read this post and it really just brought me back to the ground. It said, no matter who's president, God is in control. And I was like, yeah. So it's like, that's true, because no matter who it is, we're gonna overcome, we're gonna get through. We just have to keep being steadfast. And like you said, Biden and Harris are definitely not saviors. But I think people are just was so tired of Trump that it could have been a wet paper napkin and we probably would have voted for it, But it is a sigh of relief. Like, it really is a relief, at least for me. But we, like you said, we still got work to do. We got to put our boots on the ground, and we got to hold them just as accountable for what they do as if it was a Republican in the office, and just stay on them as well. And so I'm looking forward to it. It was record numbers. Like, when they said how many people voted, when you saw those numbers, it was like, in a pandemic at that, it was like, wow, people are really itching for a change. And I think, like you said, with it being 50-50, that just shows how divided we are. Like, if 50% of our country can vote for President Trump after how he's behaved, the policies he's enacted, the things that has come out his mouth as a grown, like as an elderly man, like, and to see that half of the country still voted in favor of that, it's just like, wow, like that was really shocking to me, like, now what's next? We know we're divided. as far as how we stand on issues. But now we just got to find a way to come together and work it out for the better for everybody, and especially for Black people, because we went through it these last 4 years. Minorities, LGBT, everybody just went through it, and so now we just gotta figure out what's next.
Yeah. You know, I noticed a lot of you guys said, I think all of us said we talked about work. And I was talking with a mentor of mine, and she said something that hit me. She said, David, let's stop calling it work. She said, Black folks been doing this since we landed. She said, it's called fighting. She said, now it's time to stop. She said, we can keep fighting, we can keep working, but we done our part. She said, now we need to hold them jokers accountable. She said, that is the next time. She said, that's the next level of work. She said, we've already laid the foundation. We've already laid the groundwork. She said, we've been doing it for over 400 years. She said, now we have to hold them accountable. Those people who we have voted in, and not just Biden and Harris, but people locally. There are a lot of people who were reelected locally into the state House of Representatives, state Senate, city council, people that are in those positions. And so the question is, how do we hold them accountable? And so I always encourage people, go to the meetings. And now is the best, now more than ever, meetings are more accessible than ever, because now we have these. Before, people, you had to find time, you had to take off work, and before the virus. But now everything is on Zoom, or it's on Facebook Live or Instagram Live. And I'm just like, go to the meetings, sign up to speak, talk about, and really do your research too. I think that's the big thing, because a lot of people, and me and Rashid had this conversation, a lot of folks don't do their research. They want you to do it for them. And that's not how that works. You have to do the research yourself and know who it is that you're voting for, and know about the policies in place and the questions you're going to ask. So what I want to do, I want to kind of ask you guys, what are some things that you have done to kind of be civically engaged even before the election, and what do you plan to do afterwards?
I think for me, I'm typically not, I don't watch, I don't look for things. This year I didn't do like a ton of research, but I made sure like I started following people who were posting these things. And I think social media is really big, and it's a really similar to like attending meetings, like following people that are politically aware and post political content, I think is a great way to be civically engaged. And I made sure that I my feed was filled with that, right? So I would always see it. For me, that was a big step. I shout out, and I want to continue to support those people and follow those people, and also share things, encourage people in that way. I also want to shout out a friend of mine over in Cali who has a podcast with some of his friends called Uncouth Radio. One of their episodes, they went through all the propositions that were on the ballot in California, explain what a yes or no means, right? I don't know if that's necessarily my ministry in terms of civic engagement, but encouraging people to watch people that is their ministry. I think that's something that I can do, and also continue to be an activist in the mental health realm, in the mental health stage. I feel like that's a way that I stay civically and politically engaged, and like, all right, this is happening in a larger society. This is how I'm going to affect my immediate areas of influence.
And to piggyback off what you said, shout out to Larissa and Freedom John. Freedom John, raise your hand so everybody know who Freedom John is. So now y'all know who Freedom John is. For posting, Freedom John, I follow him because he posts a lot of great information. But Freedom John and Larissa both did articles that I placed like at the top as feature stories for the past couple of weeks to kind of give people some idea in our local area what to look for. And he broke down the propositions for Philadelphia because one of them, and I think we had this conversation, was stop and frisk, which, you know, our current mayor was supposed to get done in his first term and he didn't. So yeah, I remember that was part of his campaign. That was part of his whole thing. He was going to stop and frisk here in Philadelphia, and it kind of got swept under the rug. And so he kind of put it back on us in this last election, which is cute because this is his last term. He was voted in what, last year or the year before last? So I mean, am I lying though? This is his last term, and we know he has larger, you know, aspirations. I'm not going to go into that because I don't want to give out too much government information because y'all know I'll be insider. But the thing is, you know, it kind of it just it confirms what we've been saying, that the power belongs to the people. And we have to do our research. We have to know who we're putting in office, who's really for us, and knowing that all skin folk ain't kinfolk. And that some folks that ain't like us will work harder for us than our own. Sad to say.
I think that's a good point, but I'm Issa Rae. I'm for everybody black. I mean, I do my research for sure. I'm being silly, but I am. I do my research, especially before an election, to see who has the values that I think will be beneficial to not just myself, but to my community. Right? I'm a very unselfish voter. It's just not about me. And being a new homeowner, that has changed the way that I've been thinking, because I'm like, well, who are the people around here that can help me figure out why the trash ain't being picked up properly? Or, you know, who can help me figure out X, Y, and Z? So that's where I'm headed now. Next is to get in those people's spaces and faces, because I want to know not only what they can do for me, but how can I be a part of change in my community. And then also trying to figure out where I'm going to be when it comes to advocacy, you know, otherwise as well, other than doing what we do here at Noire Life, because this is a part of my advocacy, impacting and like teaching people, you know, things that, you know, breaking it down for the folk. So because I think that a lot of times people feel like politics, I don't want to do politics, but they've heard that. Like, we do that a lot in our community. I don't talk politics. I don't talk religion. I don't talk money. Literally all those things we need to talk about, because that's the reason why we don't have generational wealth. That's why we have so much stuff going on in our communities that are happening that we truly have a change. We can truly make a change in. Like, we have to have those conversations and stop saying, well, I don't do that. And that, because if we continue to do the not do, we're going to continue to have what we have.
I agree. I like that.
I was going to say, I think that's a really good point, and especially when you guys say that, like, you do the research before. I think that so many people are looking for other people to tell them things, and it's not so much necessarily about all the time. And this is like, and I just want to make sure that the point I'm making is that this is what work we have to do after voting, is making sure that people understand that when you vote in elections that are quote unquote presidential, you're still voting for things that are in your neighborhood. Right. So that's always been the most important reason as to why I always come out and vote, regardless of whether it's, not irregardless, but regardless of whether it's president or not. Because a lot of people don't realize that you actually do vote specifically for things like the stop and frisk. A lot of people didn't know that we were actually voting to have like an actual council of citizens to hold the police accountable for their actions. And I think that the thing is, the voteps is what people have been calling them, put on these like shame hats, and they shame people who don't vote, and they shame people who voted third party. but they don't actually put this effort into telling people about these things that are going on at yearly elections. Like elections just don't happen every 4 years, and that's how people make it seem. Like they make it seem like it's just as simple as showing up once every 4 years. And I'm like, and if that's your argument, you haven't been doing much either, baby, because there's so much more work to be done. Our kids don't even know what a provisional ballot is. We don't get taught election talk in schools. We don't know any of this shit until we turn 18. Like the first time I talked about this actually in the article that I wrote talking about the different ballot questions. The first time back in, oh Lord, 2014, 2015 maybe, when I voted in a local election, I got in there and I was like, what are these questions? First of all, the language they use is vague as hell. So like you don't understand shit they're telling you in there. So if you haven't done anything beforehand, you're not going to know what to push on the ballot. So you might as well not push anything at all, because you can actually send your vote where it shouldn't go. So I don't blame people who don't know and don't have that accessibility to information, so they don't make these decisions. And that's why I say, rather than shaming people who don't vote and vote third party, there are literally people who you could be helping to make sure they know this information is out there. People who want to vote, you could actually be making sure that their vote counts and matters, but you choose to complain and you choose to shame people. So yeah, like that in itself is just work we have to do. We have to make sure that we keep momentum going and that we don't count victories like this as end all be all. Because that's how people treat it. And even though they say they know they don't, even though people say they know it's not end all be all, we know 9 times out of 10 it's very end all be all for them until 2024. So we have to keep educating people. We have to keep pushing for curriculums that teach our kids these things early on, so that when they get to our ages, they are able to make those fully functioning educational and educated opinions, and they can start leading this country. Like it's really just going to start with the schools, honestly, for me, because a lot of people are just stuck in their ways.
I learned at home. I've been voting since I was a child, like with my mom. You know what I mean? So I think that just like we're having these conversations together. You say you have a godchild. Many of us have children, godchildren, extended families, nieces, nephews, etc. Like having those conversations with them as well is really important, because it does matter that those kids are not hearing those things in schools, or it's a washed up version. And I remember being in high school, it was just a few years ago. And I remember like truly loving civics. Like I was like, this is the bomb. You couldn't tell me I was going to be a senator, all that, because I was just very much intrigued about how to be engaged and like how laws were made and things like that. And so somewhere along the way, it was like, okay, I think I got all the muddy stuff that had to start to see the things that happened in politics. And I was like, well, that's not my character. I don't want to be like that. So I have to figure out a different way to be involved. But I think like along with making sure that students are taught in schools, curriculum, we have to do that at home too.
Absolutely. And I'm not going to say I disagree with that, because I 100% agree with that. But I do think about people like myself, where even though my grandma took me to the ballots, she didn't know certain things on there herself because she herself wasn't properly educated. And again, my grandmother didn't have any more than like a 4th grade education. So there are people who are like me who still go up. So I think about places like school as central places where we know all kids go to get information. And so, yeah, so absolutely. If people have the knowledge at home, they do need to be having these conversations. That is the work. And a lot of people think that kids, we talk, let kids be kids about the wrong things. Politics and knowing how to vote is not allowing the child to be a child. It's making sure they're informed. So I 100% agree with you.
Lynn, Yaya?
Yeah, I want to piggyback off what both of them said, because I agree with both of them. Like, and to go back to your original question, like being locally engaged, I am definitely involved with the school board. I'm at those meetings as a parent. And to go with what she said, they are really failing our children. Our Black and brown children are really being left behind. When I look at the curriculum, I have an 8th grader, and she's doing papers. I'm like, okay, why are you typing like that? They don't teach y'all how to type. And she like typing with one phone. I was like, that's gonna take forever. So I had to literally set up classes on the computer to teach her how to type. And I'm just like, wow. like just basic things. And let's keep it real. The schools with the black and brown, they not really caring about that stuff that's gonna get our children ahead. Like you should really know that when you're like sixth grade, really, especially when everything is electronic. But that's why I'm most active is I want to put names to faces. I want to know what they're pushing, these agendas they're putting in the school, what they're holding up and what they're not. And it's just like it really opened my eyes. Is like, wow, our children really are being left behind. Even basic civics class, how the electoral college work. It's just really sad in a way. And the goal I reach, like as a parent, yes, I know that when I think about how I was educated, I didn't learn a lot of stuff until I got to college. And so I want to be able to give my children that head start of saying, you should know certain things before you even get to this point. That so when you go to in certain spaces and you're around people that may have had a leg up, you won't be feeling inferior when it comes to your education. I think that's really important. And it takes like when I go to those meetings, there's hardly no one there. Might be 5 or 6 parents, and it's just like really sad, especially when we know how important the education is in giving our children a leg up in this world. It's really, really, really important. And with online learning, and you know, a lot of these parents don't even know what this stuff is. Let's just keep it real. Because I teach them how to do a math problem. They were like, well, that ain't how to teach. I'm like, the answer, right? So what difference do it make? You know?
We got that right.
Right, but they were like, okay, we can't do it that way. And I'm like, oh, you know what I'm saying? But I don't know that way, that the other way that they're teaching them. And so, and if you aren't able to afford a tutor or pay someone to come in and sit down and help your child, it's these children are really being left behind. So I agree with both of them. Like as a parent, we have to like everything's our fingertip. We can go online and pull up tutorials and stuff like that. So I just try to take advantage of all those resources. There's free learning, but a lot of parents, and let's keep it real, they so busy working, trying to take care of bills, that even if they wanted to put their time in with their children, they can't. That's why our schools should be able to step up and help those that they know are falling behind. And they can tell easy from the demographics, the children that need the most help. But you know, I think it's a combination of both. We got to really just as parents hold our schools accountable and our children accountable for what they could be learning. Because the same way you can learn those dances and all those lyrics, you can get up there and learn how to figure out how to do this math. So it's a little bit of both.
I always tell people this story. When I worked as a parent advocate for a couple of years, I would always tell parents, y'all don't really understand how much power you guys have. And I would tell them the story of my parents and other groups of parents in my hometown. The school that we were in, the elementary school, was over, by the time I got there, it had to be over 50, 60 years old. So you're talking about the 90s, and that school was built maybe early 1900s. So they had this little thing, I don't know if you guys heard about it, called asbestos. It was a lot of it, to the point where it was falling out of the ceiling. And you had a lot of students who suffered from asthma and things like that. And so there was even speculation that there was a couple of teachers who had cancer and had passed away. And it was a lot of stuff. And I remember the parents got together along with the teachers, because this is rural North Carolina, there's no unions. I have my own personal reason about that. But they worked together collectively, and they went to the board. Now, the school board was majority Black, predominantly Black, while the county board was predominantly white. And they brought both of them to the table and said, either y'all give our kids a better building, a more up-to-date, state-of-the-art building, or we're going to find a way to bus them somewhere else. Because we know if we bus them somewhere else, that's tax dollars leaving your county. Let's just say within a year or two, they had an architect in the building. They had and not just any architect, I believe it was a Black architect at that. They went all out. They said, let's find us a Black architect. And they brought him in. They had found land outside of the city town limits, and they started building. Now, granted, the land they built it on was formerly swampland, but it's okay. The school is still beautiful. It's the elementary and middle school, state of the art. I mean, I never got to go there. By the time they built it, I was in high school. So it shows you how long the process took, but parents kept fighting. And parents, I remember it was news stations from all over North Carolina. I mean, Raleigh, Durham, Greenville was at the church that night, and parents was up there voicing their, like, they was at that podium going off. And so that's why I tell parents, you know, if you want some change happen, make some noise. And you can't get quiet. You gotta keep, it has to be consistent. The squeaky, what they say, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, gets the grease. So you gotta keep it talking. So Lindsay, I know you do a lot in New York with being a public health official, and you know, like she's literally on the front lines of like this whole pandemic. But what are you doing, you know, to help keep civilly being engaged in the community and involving others and keeping them informed as well?
So when I do have free time, like many of you can probably relate at this point, I actually have the privilege of teaching high school students in a STEP program. So it's kind of like a pipeline that NYU has set up, New York University. So I not only teach them global public health, but I also make sure I educate them how to fact check. That's a hot topic now across the board in every area: education, politics, health, you name it. Fact checking is huge. So just making sure you ask that question. Just because I'm scrolling and this pops up, this information, like, I don't know, something crazy, like there's a new ant that's going to kill everybody out. Okay, is that who wrote this? Where is this coming from? Why, like, is this fact or fiction? So having that mindset, because I feel like that's really harped on in higher education, but prior to that, if you don't have the parents to support you to think like that, you might just take it as word. Oh, great, there's killer ants that's going to kill everybody, and it's not even real news. So just fact checking is one way, and then another way is, you know, like you guys have been saying, starting at home. You know, kind of being that person who's not afraid to challenge people when I hear something. Once again, going back to the fact checking. So I feel as though the micro level is a great way to start when it comes to these changes that we're talking about. And that's what I've mainly been focusing on, whether it's with coworkers, with the kids I get the privilege of teaching, or even online. Just thinking, where is this coming from? Who is saying this? And how can I find out what's really going on?
I like that. How did you guys feel about the reception to Kamala being VP? Because, and the reason I say that, because it's mixed reviews within the Black community, and that's why we have Noire Life, because we're a diverse group of people. The Black people are diverse, and I think that's what people have to understand. That's the reason I started the magazine, to show people we're diverse. We're not all the same. We don't all like the same foods. We don't all like the same music. You know, we're different. We're very, we're just amazing, to say the least. But how did y'all feel about that reception? Because, you know, I had some folks that's like, I mean, she she Black. And then I had people that was rah-rah for her, like, you know, all out, like, you know, power to the people. What are y'all thoughts about that? What was y'all seeing on y'all social media? And then in your own thoughts, what did you see, your own thoughts and opinion?
I mean, I've had mixed reviews the same way. Like, I mean, I'm not jumping for joy about Kamala. I'm excited that it's a woman of color in the office, of course, but when you go back and look at her policies, they're questionable. I mean, we got to keep it real about that, especially when it pertains to Black people. But in another sense, she was a lady doing her job. We hold her to as much account as she was a white woman doing her job. So I think it just goes both ways. I see you. So I think it just goes both ways. Like, I mean, it was mixed reviews. Some people loved her, some people like, But I'm excited to see a woman of color as vice president, and let's just see what she does. Like, I was a fan of her in the Senate. Like, I feel like she held those people to the fire when it came down to it. She was one of the only few that asked real questions when it came to Senate hearings and judicial hearings. Like she asked substantial questions. So I mean, I would like to see more of that side of her when it comes to policy. But I think we gotta just give everybody a chance and just see what they do. Like, we can only go by their actions and not really how we feel about them. Really, we just gotta kind of just see what she does from this point on. You fought for this space. You're here now. What you gonna do with it? And that's just what we're gonna have to see for these next 4 years.
Yeah, I would say it.
Lindsay, you go off, girl. I got. Listen,
We keep wanting to go off at the same time. I love it.
Okay, I got you.
I would definitely say that it plays into what we were saying earlier, like having a moment to celebrate. Like, this isn't the above all answer. So celebrating that we have a woman, a Black woman of Indian heritage as well in the White House. Like, let's turn up. Okay, now it's time to hold them accountable. It doesn't matter where she comes from. Her history does show that her policies have been questionable, in my opinion. But hey, let's celebrate. Let's throw some kudos out there to her, and then get back to holding her accountable.
Yeah, and I would just have to say that I agree with that. On my feed, I mean, I follow more abolitionists than I do anything. So I mean, of course, they were going off and they were really like eating sis up. But but I don't think that it's fair. Let me just say that it's very easy to understand that people can have valid criticisms of somebody, but then you can also see clear misogyny and misogynoir in their statements. And we can decipher those. You see which ones and you know which ones are which. And it's not, so me making a criticism of her, so me making an article, I just wrote an article about, stepping up for trans lives. So of course I'm going to understand and have a little bit more criticism of her about her formally throwing like trans women in men's prisons. So of course I'm going to have that take on her, but that doesn't take away from the women on this screen finding representation and having a Black woman in office. I don't have to take away from that to have that criticism. I don't have to feel like every time her name comes up or one of y'all say something about her, I have to make a face or I have to do all that. Like, people can have whatever opinion they want about her as long as we're all in the same position of holding her accountable when it comes down to shit. That's all I worry about. That's all I care about. And then I will say that it is very clear misogyny, especially when Joe Biden is the actual president. And people keep asking about what she's going to do. And I'm like, she's the vice president. And again, these people only have but so much power anyway when, the House is red. So I'm like, we can't sit here and think that everything's going to be different overnight anyway. And we, us on this line, we already know that. But it's very clear and obvious that people are a little bit harder on cis than they are on anybody because, and that's a Black person. It's not a Black person thing, but I was going to say, it's definitely a misogyny thing because even looking at Black people, Black people loved Obama, and I cannot find people who will not have a criticism of him. And I'm like, baby, but the facts are right there, and he wasn't the greatest president either. And they don't make those criticisms public. And then when you try to, they say, well, at least we had a Black president in office. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that, especially when people's lives are at stake. Representation is not always what we're looking for. It's great to have it, but at what cost when they're doing the same things that white people and like colonizers do? But again, those are clear. It's a very clear indication that people are just misogynistic because they have more criticism for somebody who hasn't even taken office yet than somebody who's already held it. And I'm not down for it. But again, I can still have a criticism of her, but it doesn't mean that I care to, have a conversation about her every 5 seconds. It's obsessive, men are weird, and that's it.
I mean,
That was Freedom Joan, y'all. That was Freedom Joan.
And we talked about this in our pre-election, podcast. I feel like
Yeah.
people
But
don't
she's from
take.
California.
Yes, I mean, and people automatically assume that Californians are liberal, and typically we are. But everyone that comes from California is not a liberal. It's like this monolithic, because she's Black, she's going to be liberal. No, she's conservative. And so I would never think to hold Kamala liberal goal. Like she's not that. She's never been that, and I think it's unfair to hold her to like, oh, she's going to be the person. Like, no, she's not liberal. She's not a liberal person. She never has been. She's never ran on the liberal ticket. Like, that's not her. That's never going to be her. And so I feel like because she's Black, again, it's that monolith, that paintbrush, the generalization. And it's not even saying that she's like not kinfolk, she's just not liberal. So for the people that are really liberal and want all these things, want to burn down the system, that's not her. And I feel like it's unfair to hold her to that standard if that has never been her, and also just culturally, we don't give people a chance to progress. Like, maybe she was super conservative as AG, but she was a Black woman in a predominantly white field. She wasn't going to go after police, these white police departments where all the people are white. She wasn't going to do that because she would have never got to where she was, right? So she just had to play the game, and whether that's good or bad, but it's like, I feel like it's just like she's also a Black woman who held these spaces. She had to work herself up. So how much more acquiescing does she have to do? Look at the dummy that's the imposter in the White House now. He had to do nothing. He had to be smart. He had to tell an intelligible thought. But Sis has to be the one to change the whole system by herself as a Black woman. Come on now. Like, that's just unrealistic. And I don't think it's fair to hold her to that standard. Not saying that we can't push her to be more liberal, but people have to realize where she came from. And we see that white people always are going to vote in their best interest. So what does she have to do? What were her personal beliefs? And what does she have to do to get to where she is now? We have to take that into account. And also think just culturally, in Western culture, even if we're not white, we have a hard time with nuance and duality, right? So kind of like everyone else said, like Rashid said, like Lindsay said, we can celebrate the representation, but also hold her accountable.
Yes.
We can celebrate that her paving a way, but also criticize, right? We have to be able to hold that nuance, just like we can celebrate, but also still know that there's work. And if people don't agree that, like, that's okay. But I feel like all these things are playing against her because she's a Black woman, and people don't take that into account. Also think, it's misinformation. Like, people who talk about who against her, she all that, like, how many of y'all actually sat down and looked at her record? How many of y'all have looked at her Senate voting record? How many of y'all have looked at how many convictions of low-level criminals she supported or didn't support? How many of y'all doing this work? People hear stuff, and because she's a Black woman, because we know the Black woman is the most disrespected and hated, people go with it and they believe the worst. And that's also not fair. But y'all not out here doing this work, and stop frauding. Like, stop playing because you're not out here doing this work and not taking into account what she's had to do. Like, how many Black men did she lock up for real? Do you even know what the job description of an attorney general is for a state? Do you?
That's right.
Like, let's be real.
And to go off what Manisha said, like, did you look at these crimes these Black men committed? Like, we got to hold everybody accountable in the same sense. Like, and I feel sometimes, especially when you're going through social media, people go off emotion. And when you go off emotion, you don't necessarily make the best decisions. Like, of course, something might get us fired up, but sometimes you got to just take 10 seconds and just assess it and say, okay, let me look at this. And to kind of go what Lindsay said earlier about misinformation, like, it's been a few times I had to even check my parents with it. Like, they'll show me something on Facebook. And that's one thing that you have to be careful about, because they put misinformation out. And it looks real. It seems real. I'm like, Mom, where are you getting this from? That's not true. Like, yeah. You just have to be careful with that. And like you said, Black women, we always have got it. But the thing is, even with all that stuff they throw at us, we still climb out on top. We still end up saving the day when it come down to it. So I think with this election, it just really was just emotional on both sides. Like people either hated Trump so bad, we just got to get him out of here, get him out of here. And it was like, oh, never Biden. Do you know what they did for Black people? Like in the end, you just got to go with what you feel is right. And I knew that. I mean, look how divisive the country has been. Like it's always been race issues, but it has been horrible, horrible, horrible. And I just think that, like Manisha said, the way that they see a Black woman that's in power, and it's just like, to some men that is just like the worst thing ever. Some men don't even want their women working or just raising children. So how can a woman be in the White House in a position of power? That just like that really just make their bones quake. That's just how some people are gonna be, and it's just gonna be like that unfortunately until they just die out. Like if you look at the younger generation, they're much more open. They and I just think that's just how it's gonna be for a while. You just got some people, some men, some people that just like a woman in power is probably the worst thing that could ever happen.
Yeah. Back to Manisha, what you were saying about what she had to do to get to where she's at. I don't think people realize politics and government is just a big game. It's just a big game. And I think about the game night I used to have with friends, and it was the one game we used to play, and I think it's like Mafia or the Wolf, whatever the game is. But your goal, even if you're the wolf or the mafia person, your role, part of your goal is to get other people to think that it's other people in the circle. You know what I'm talking about, Louise? Like you got to get other people to think it's the other people in the circle and think that you're the good guy. You're the. And then at the end, when they've all out of guesses and they pick the wrong person, and then you come out and like, oh, it was me the whole time. That's how politics is at the end of the day. I feel like, it's this campaign on, I'm the best person, choose me. This is why you should choose me. Look at what I can do for you. They're dangling the carrot in front of the most disenfranchised groups ever. So they dangle this carrot of democracy and freedom, and we go for it because for a long time, I think what happens with, and I'm speaking from experience, from history, from what I've seen, I think what happens every few years or every few generations, we go through a renaissance. Like right now, we're in a renaissance where, our grandparents was in it. It missed our parents. Some of us, it missed our parents. But our grandparents was in it because they were part of that Black Power movement. They were part of that Black Panther movement after the civil rights. Okay, now Martin has passed on. He was killed. What do we do next? And so we're the grandchildren of those people. And so now we're kind of picking up where they left off. And so what's happening is we have to hold people accountable, even those that look like us, right? And so we have to, it's like they're dangling this carrot and saying, hey, do this, we'll get this for you. But we know that's not going to happen. Case in point with the stop and frisk thing here in Philly. That was something that was supposed to have been like abolished back during his first term. That was one of the platforms he ran on when he first ran for his first term. I'm gonna abolish this, and everybody, all Black folks, was on board. We was all on board that choo-choo train, and then he got in office, got comfortable, and we forgot. And that's the thing. We got to get to a point where we don't forget. We have to always remember they not gonna save us. We all we got.
Because a politician is going to be politician,
yes,
Monday through Sunday, right? You don't get that far. I don't know if anyone, very few people get to the Senate, the House, the presidency, the cabinet, if they're not some type of selfishness. We also have to understand, just like the game of Mafia, like all these bills and stuff, all that stuff is muddled. Even if we look at the Affordable Care Act, is not what it was originally supposed to be, because we had to get it voted through, right? So all that stuff had to get watered down, right? So that the conservatives, the red, not even just the red, because there are some real conservative old white Democrats, okay? That's a step over the red, okay? Just barely Democrat, right? So all these bills get put all this stuff in it, and that's why you have to do your research, but it makes it confusing to get stuff through. So we don't know truly what has been put in what the original intent was, because all the stuff gets changed and edited, stuff added in, taken out, so that it can get pushed through as something. And it, by the point it gets through, it's a percentage, a fraction of what it was supposed to be, the good that it was supposed to do. But people, it's not, they're voting in self-interest or doing things in self-interest. And like you said, like, unless we tear the whole system down and just get rid of this whole stuff, like, there is no politician that I believe that will truly be for the people, for the liberation of Black, Indigenous, marginalized, people of color, queer, trans, disabled, like, for the people at the bottom. None of these politicians are going to be for us. And we have to stop treating them, Black or otherwise, anything like that. Like, we just have to understand where we at. We are in America. America ain't for nobody but the 1%.
Thank you for saying that. I think a lot of people don't recognize what happens when it comes to what we just call politics. Like, when you have a bill and you say, all right, we can even talk about stop and frisk. And the intent is good, but then it has to go through cabinets, and then on the federal level, it has to go through the House and the Senate. And depending on who's the majority in there, if it's a majority Republican, they're going to push for the things that they want done. And so they're going to put things in that may not even have anything to do with that particular bill. It can be like, whatever it is that their party has interest in, it could be like, well, we'll give you this if you say we can drill oil over here in Texas, right? It has nothing to do with the bill, but these are my contingencies. This is what you can do in order for us to say yes to your bill, whatever you're proposing. You are going to give us this. And so a lot of times people don't recognize that. You start with one particular thing and it's of great interest, wonderful. But then it gets, like Manisha said, muddled down, beat up, and then it has to be re-reviewed several times often. And a lot of people don't understand that. And like you said, we talked about earlier, just like being educated, or Manisha said, how many people have actually looked up her policies and have looked up what she voted on? Like, that stuff is public record. And if we took a little time to get off TikTok, and I like TikTok, I do. We took a little bit, I spent a lot of time on TikTok. I didn't have like an actual account. I should have. But the amount of time that I spent on there on some evenings, if I took the time to read a section of a bill that had something to do that might impact myself or my community, and then somehow figure out how I can become involved locally in some capacity, that can change a lot of things. And so just me doing that, and then my friend doing that, and then like that's the only way we're gonna have some changes. If, like you all said already, we have to do the work. We can't be complacent. We cannot allow them to pacify us and say, well, we said Black Lives Matter. You know, we said it's on our page, and we wrote a little bit in the mission too. You know what I mean? We made a T-shirt. We can't keep letting them pacify us, and we have to hold everybody accountable to what it is that they're going to do. But we can't just say, we can't also keep complaining. Like, we can have a criticism, but then you can also be a complainer. So if we're going to criticize or complain, like, then what are you going to do? So now you have that opinion. Wonderful. We all have them. What are you going to do about it? Or are we just here chatting? You know what I mean? So like, I often like have those conversations with friends of mine, like, okay, so what we gonna do? What's next? And so I think that we have to figure that out as well, and then also challenge each other on what's going to be next and how we can not get stuck in that complacent space where we start edging on the side of complaining opposed to action.
And I think we have to use the tools that we have, right? So like, even though like we can spend a lot of time at TikTok, there needs to be political TikToks, people that just talk about or promote these things. Like, we have to use the tools that are at our disposal, and especially if we're going to engage, you know, the younger millennials, Gen Zers, or even, you know, people, millennials, zennials, generation before it with ZX, I don't know, whatever. Everybody who's using it, we have to use those things, right? My kids that I work with, they are not going to go and look up anything, even for their homework, that's not on TikTok. So why don't we use that? Like, we have to use that. And even in my profession, you know, getting the word out, the older crew, the older people, the people that have been in it are like, social media is not the time to have these conversations, not the place, but it is. This is where we're having a conversation. This is where we're all meeting, right? We can't do all this work at this one conference in person. Like, we have to have these conversations where we're able to have them, and we have to have them on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, on Snap. I don't even know if that's things. I never got one. On Twitter, you know. We have to use the things that are at our disposal, right? And so I think we also have to continue to expand our way in which we share information, because now we have so many different ways to do it. And that's how the Black Lives Matter movement has been what it is globally, right? 50 years ago, we would have never known what was going on in Nigeria, because American media for sure not going to show it.
Unless you picked up an international magazine, and most of us do not.
Mm-hmm.
Read Noire Life magazine.
Yeah, I was going to say that I really think that that's really true. And I think the thing that people don't realize is accessibility is, like, honestly everything. So what I was saying earlier, even about disabled folks, but again, we were talking about those single mothers who are, you know, running back and forth to work and taking care of a household by themselves. When they go home, they don't not want to turn on CNN. Like, you know, Instagram is their escape sometimes. And that's sad to say, but that's the escape for Black people sometimes, because we're being overworked. So I actually have people all the time. So even with the Freedom Drum page, I have people all the time who thank me for all the content I post, because it keeps them aware. It helps them be civically engaged in ways that they never knew they could be before. And, you know, it's just a community where they get to also just meet other people as well. So people don't realize, people always thank me for, like, doing these things, but I'm like, you know, we can all be doing the same things. It's very easy to screenshot. I honestly don't do more than read what I have and then just redistribute what I know. Like, you know, and so many people are like, oh my God, this is such a great tool. And I'm like, but we could all be doing this. Like, you know, and I try to tell people that all the time, even when they, like, try to have this, like, fan persona of me. I'm like, baby, do not stand me. I'm not Beyonce. I'm going to disappoint you because I have an opinion and I'm not just a news cycle. And that's what some people just want me to be, as a news cycle. However, I post what I want and what I think is valuable, what I think is important for people to know, based on my beliefs. And you don't have to agree with me. And a lot of people don't, and they tell me they don't agree with everything I put, but it's still useful information. Because just like people say, I mean, just as easy as people can go on and spew their bullshit opinions, you can also, those opinions you don't agree with, you can go to Google, look them up, and see what the fuck people are actually talking about. And nobody does that, but everybody wants to argue, but goes back to the same tired ass talking points. And I'm like, baby, we moved on from that 5 years ago. We are, like, far on in academia. Like, we've already, like, debunked all of that, and you're still living in 2006. Like, you know, and right. And, you know, and it's just, you know, it's important not to beat a dead horse, but to also make sure that you make things accessible. So just like you said, like, if you can, just post something on your Facebook, post something on your Twitter, post something on your Instagram. It's helpful. And I really do get disheartened when people try to make folks who can't get out feel ashamed for not being able to be super civically engaged. Because again, it's like we fight for all this shit and we know that people don't have accessibility, but then y'all also shame people for not being able to do things. So it's like, what work is really being done when we're really just contradicting ourselves a lot, you know? So I think a lot of times we just need to get up off our higher horse, and understand that everybody's not on the same level of education as us. Sometimes we do need to quote unquote dumb things down, and that's not dumbing things down, but it's knowing your audience. So yeah, making things accessible. So that's language, that's where you post, that's how you say things. And yeah.
And opening the conversation, right? Like sometimes I think people get so stuck in their space where they feel like they have to be right. My opinion is right no matter what. The end, right? And they cut off the opportunities where we can actually have conversations that educate one another, because my opinion might be exactly true and right? However, maybe like you said, some people may not understand it, have never known it, but you open up opportunity for conversation, and I don't think that we do that enough. I feel like we get stuck in this I'm right, you're wrong. And sometimes we're both right and wrong. Like there's different ways to look at things, there's different ways to do things, and we don't, it doesn't, like, you know what I mean? We don't give ourselves or other people the opportunity to just be. And so I think that also utilizing these spaces as a way to have a conversation with people who we may not have like minds, and that's also okay, right?
Mm-hmm. And I was going to say that I think another thing that people underestimate is how social media can be a very powerful tool to actually track self-growth. I look back at Facebook statuses I made 6 years ago, and baby, I was a different person. I thought I was the smartest person and the baddest thing, the smartest thing talking and the baddest thing walking. And I look back on those things and I'm like, baby, you were a mess. You were a baby mess. And it's okay because now you are grown and put together. But, you know, had I not been having those conversations all the time on Facebook and, you know, getting other people's opinions and knowing that I am teachable, being teachable is not being wrong. We are all teachable. Knowing that I am teachable and I do not sit on my high horse all the time, I am able to give people so much valuable information. I am able to make people realize that they knew shit all along. A lot of things that people talk about in everyday life is like you said earlier, Larice. People say they don't talk politics, but you talk that shit all the time. You just don't have a name for it. So again, yeah. So it's like,
that's right.
Yeah, having those conversations and making sure that people know that these things they're talking about are real things and that you can do real things about them is important in all those spaces.
Well,
I just wanted to add, this is a lot of what we've been talking about. I actually wrote in the article moving past hashtags, because it's so important, especially now with so much going on, from the political climate, the pandemic, trying to have your personal life's still going on, even with the world feeling like it's falling apart. It's really important that people, if there's something you want to do, you start from where you are with what you have. Like there's so much talent on this call right now alone. Like I'll use David starting a magazine. That's amazing, something I would love to do. I'm sure anybody else, but that might not be my calling. So this is also a good turning point for people to realize, like, what can I bring to the table? Is it calling somebody up and starting that conversation? Is it start using my platform and posting information that I find important, and is that is also factual? So I think also having a positive narrative when you bring up that type of activism, or, you know, encouraging people to get involved, it's important that we also encourage them. Hey, everyone has their gifts. What's yours? How can you step up to the table? There's nothing too big or small you can do. So I think this is a good time for us as a whole, activists and everything, to start encouraging people that way. Not so much judge people, because I feel like that's a lot of kind of the tone people have on social media nowadays. If you're not doing what I'm doing, you're wrong. Or, you know, if you don't see it this way, you're wrong. No, it should be like, hey, what gifts do you have and how can you bring it to the table to help the greater good?
I like that. Well, you guys have been just amazing tonight with all your input and your expertise and your knowledge. And I'm giving you a compliment. Smile, Manish, just a little bit, because But no, I definitely have enjoyed this conversation, and I look forward to many, many more panel discussions like this. Um, any final thoughts before we close out?
Welcome some joy into your lives. Don't take everything so serious. Take some U days. Like I requested off 2 days, tomorrow and Friday, for absolutely no reason except for because I wanted to. They're there. They're not giving me that money any other kind of way. Therefore, I'm going to take those days off, and I'm at home anyway. So why be doing work at home when I could be doing home at home? So yeah, put yourself first. Put yourself first, and welcome some joy into your lives.
So ain't nobody else got no final thoughts, really?
That was the same one.
Okay, I have one.
Let me go ahead and log her out. Let me go ahead and just.
Don't do my friend like that. Don't do my friend like that. Okay. I think everyone has a gift, right? Kind of like Lindsay was saying, we all have gifts, and try to step off of social media to figure out what that is. Everyone can be an activist, but we all don't have to be an activist the same way, right? Everyone is not a protester. Everyone should not be on the front lines. Everyone is not an organizer, right? Your activism can be anything, right? I try to go to protests, but that's not really my thing. So what do? I am an activist in that I work with young Black children caught up in the juvenile justice system, and I empower them in every conversation that I have. That is my activism. That is what I do. I am naturally empathetic person. I can see different perspectives, and I use that to navigate the circles that I go through, right? That is also my activism. Everyone has a gift. Everyone can be an activist. Just figure out what that is for you. And most of that's going to have to be off of social media. Even though you can use social media to be an activist too. That's also a thing.
So, with that being said, we thank you guys for joining us tonight for another special edition of Noire Life Presents. After we vote, panel discussion, what's next? Definitely follow our social media. I'll include that in the credits. And then also make sure you follow us on Twitter at Noire_mag, Facebook, Noire Life Mag LLC, and on Instagram at Noire Life Mag. So follow us. All right, we out.